Okay, I think we are complete. Yes, we are complete. Great. I wish you a happy Christmas. I know it was difficult for you to come because Christmas time is always very busy, so I'm very thankful that you are here. It's always the same faces, which is great. So can buck on that. So thank you very much that you took the journey to Bonn in December. We had some problems in our club with flus and illness and things like that, so a lot of people just are not there today from our club. But from the guys from outside, nobody's missing. So it seems Germany is dying. Yeah. Right, so this seminar today is different from the ones we did before because it doesn't cover us as a person. It's about others who are under threat or under attack. And you all know in all European countries it's the same problem, that people get more and more aggressive, get more and more over the top. And the problems we have in Germany here, they are similar in each European country. So we had a lot of incidents during this year about public attacks with knives, especially, as I said on the last seminar already. But also other violent occasions. And so I think it's the time to just take a look at what could happen when you are a witness of something like that. And what are your possibilities if you want to act? And especially we'll take a look at the law side of this, because when you are entering a scene where you are not under direct attack, it's always a problem, which we will see. And this is not only German law, it's just similar in each European country. So perhaps not word by word, but usually it's the same. So that's what we take a look at in a minute, in a short lecture. And then we will start, of course, with some kind of tactics. How can I do this when I have to intervene somehow? And of course, the practical approach. How do we do it? This will be the theme for today. And tomorrow we will work on this theme as well, but also on some personal protection stuff when you are with your wife or with your children or whatever, and you get on the threat. This is the idea of the seminar. You are aware of what you are doing here? I hope so. And for me, it's like an experiment. I don't know whether this is suitable in the way I put it together. And so I'm happy to get some feedback from you, as usual. And that's the theme of the seminar. So it's a good idea to just ask what we are actually talking about. We start with the law, as I said. What does the law say? As I said, and I think Fabien will agree, that this is usually the same in all, more or less in all European countries. That's what I found when I looked at it. It's just pretty much the same in every European country. And so this makes sense to look at it. Of course, I'm dealing with the German law. And we have in in the German criminal code, part self-defense, and you can read what it means. And of course, this is German law speaking, nobody understands. We'll go a little bit through it. Self-defense is actually a justification. If you, in self-defense, start to hit someone in his face, that's usually a crime. It's not allowed to do that. But in case of self-defense, this crime is justified because someone is attacking you. And that's the thing you should keep in mind. The things you do during something like this, in self-defense, you hit someone or you grab someone or whatever you do, is usually a crime in itself. But in the case we are talking about, it's justified by the law because the attack is not correct. That's what it means, usually. There has to be a present attack. Present attack means someone is doing something which is not allowed, hitting, kicking, whatever, attacking, and this thing is still ongoing. So you are not allowed to play Batman and hit the guy afterwards. You're only allowed to hit him while he's doing something. That's quite important. And you see by this question alone how difficult this is and how quick you are in a situation which is not good for you by law when you start to do something. And that's exactly what I'm going to tell you during this section. You always have to be aware that when the law comes into it and you go to the court, you never know how it ends. This is a very, very clear case. It's not. It's not. As soon as it goes to the court, it's not. Unlawful means the victim, the guy who is attacked, either you or someone else, does not have to tolerate the attack, of course. So if the guy is being hit by a policeman in a situation you don't know, it might be that this is a situation where the police is working and this guy has usually to tolerate what's going on. So it's not a good idea to think, okay, I have to go inside there. And if the police is working according to the law, their behavior or their hitting or putting to the ground of a person is not unlawful, of course, as long as they are working along the law they are addicted to. Required means defensive action you do or for yourself or for someone else is suitable to end the situation completely. There is no choice, or I'll do it a little bit. Your action has to stop the thing immediately. That's important. If you don't have the ability to do that, then you also have a problem. And if several options are there, let's say you have a gun or you have a club, the law says you must use a club if it's suitable to stop the situation, and you can't use a gun. So there's something, it's very hard to really do this in practice, because in a situation like this, you are also under pressure and you have to choose, what am I doing? For professionals, it is even difficult to do that. And they are forced much more to do that. When you do it, when you intervene as a policeman, the law is much more strict how you have to do it than for an ordinary person in self-defense. But it's hard to do, to choose the right thing. So, and it's always, when you go to court afterwards and the case is discussed, it's always about this. Couldn't you have done it less brutal. I'm coming to that because this affects clearly the point when you intervene, or do you intervene somehow anyway? Because this is a very important point. It's just a law at the moment. It's not nothing about tactics. So it's never clear. All the stuff we are talking about in this seminar, it's never clear. You think it's clear, but it's not, from the law side. So keep that in mind. This is important. I don't say don't intervene, but I say keep in mind what happens afterwards. And you should be aware of it. That's all I'm saying. You shouldn't be astonished, oh, why I am the victim now. This is normal afterwards. That if you intervene, you are the victim afterwards. You will be put to court maybe, and you shouldn't be astonished. That's how it is. European law. We go a step further then. So the legal situation for this application of emergency aid is by no means clear. And that you are liable to prosecution in this situation is very high. Keep that in mind. When you play Batman, you should know that. Your active intervention in the context of emergency aid should be the absolute exception. It should not be everyday working. When you see something, if you think this is not right, that's not the point to go into it. We go into that deeper in a moment, but we can say that now. What's written there in red. It should be the absolute exception and not common. Because you never know what's going on afterwards. And sometimes it's not only because of the law. So sometimes your intervention will not be suitable at all. Even in a worst case scenario, you could come to the point, I can't do anything here, actively. That doesn't mean I can't do anything, but actively, I can't do anything. We come to that. So it's not only because of the law that it should be the absolute exception, it's sometimes just because of the situation. You have to take into account that you hurt this person very badly or even kill him if it goes bad. If it's not happening, it's okay. But when you start, you should keep in your mind that this could happen. And you have to pay the price for that. And that's the point. You don't know how this exaggerates, the guy's pulling a knife out or something like that, and at the end of the day, someone is dead. Even if you think this is easy, can get them, you never know. That's my experience from 40 years of work. You never know. Okay? That's one of the most important things of the whole thing here. Fundamental decisions you need to do in emergency cases. If you see something like that, is there an immediate intervention necessary or not? That's the key point you have to ask yourself when you see something like this. Is it necessary or not that I'm doing something actively? That doesn't mean that you don't do nothing, but actively means you go into it with all the risks we already talked about. This is the key decision you have to make. And you have to make it by purpose, not by feeling. You have to think very cool about it. As we said, usually you are also triggered, or you see something like this. You see, oh, this poor guy with the spectacles, and you never know what happened before. When you come to the scene like this, you don't know who's the aggressor. You see one picture, but you don't know what happened. And that's the problem always. When you appear on the scene, when this thing already started, you haven't seen the pre-sequel of the whole thing. So this is a big problem. It's also a big problem for professionals, for policemen. When they appear to the scene, they don't know what happened before and who is the one. You see someone with a knife, yes, Okay, that's a threat, and you have to deal with it, but you don't know the whole story of it. That's a problem. It's always a problem. This is a question, but how should I decide? When is immediate intervention necessary? First thing is, if you don't intervene, there's an imminent risk of a serious injury or death of a person. If you see that, that might be a situation where you have to do something actively. Or the second one, your accompanying person, like wife, children, or whatever, are threatened or attacked. And that's all. In my opinion, that's all. No other reasons to directly intervene. Is it really a big threat going on if someone is being hit in the face? Okay. I mean, it's not a deadly thing usually, but it's your choice when you say, okay, this is enough. I have to do something. But according to the rules, I would say, okay, if it's a real serious threat, knife, of course, things like that, terrorist attacks like this, that you have to do something if you see it or it's running. But this is not very often. Think about your personal experience. Have you seen a scene like this? That's exactly it. So even if the situation is very threatening, so someone is stabbed by a knife or something like that, and there are several people involved, that's not you to intervene at that moment, because you are the second victim then. And no, that's not helpful for the guy on the ground as well, when you are the second one. It doesn't make any sense. So, still, when you see a situation like this, especially the first one, and you have too many counterparts, it doesn't make sense to intervene. We'll come to that point, how we do it when we have to intervene in a minute. Because getting in between them is not the way to do it. Definitely not. Yeah, it means that you go in and fight physically for someone else. That's intervening. Yeah, if you think this is a good idea, but if a fight is going on, which makes you intervening, when we look at this, it's a serious threat. And if you don't deal a serious threat with calming down people, because in the next second you are lying on the ground. It doesn't make sense. If the situation is different, of course you can talk to people, but that's not what I mean. Here there is an attack going on, a serious attack which forces you to do something. And then it makes no sense to talk to the people. We'll come to that later. Otherwise, there is no intervention, physical intervention of you. You don't go. What is your purpose? You want to go or you don't want to go? If you want to go, you have to do something. You have to intervene physically. But you don't say, stop it. This doesn't make any sense in this situation. That's what I mean. I'm coming to it late in a minute. Yeah? We are still at the moment of the decision, of your decision whether to intervene or not. That's, in my eyes, the only two decisions you can make when you have to do something directly. That's the other one. Direct intervention is not required. You have a dispute between persons you don't know. So they are shouting at each other, maybe pushing them around, and you don't know the situation, you don't know nothing. There's no reason to just intervene at that point. Even if they hit themselves. Imagine people like football hooligans, they are meeting up for this. But you never know. That's what I mean. If you come to this situation, you never know what was the reason for this. So if it's an unknown group of people who are hitting each other, okay, let them. So if you see, of course, no immediate serious threat, I mean weapons involved, things like that. But not if they are punching in their faces, vice versa. No way. This is you could write it just on top. Because usually when you come into a situation like this, it's always unclear. You never know all the parts of the picture, never. So it's a good idea to just stay back a little bit and look around. Don't jump into something you don't know. And be especially careful when you try to intervene in a conflict between woman and man. Because there are several reasons for that. Cultural differences, and if you have a conflict between man and woman, it's quite common that if you are the third person intervening to get them off, they both attack you. And this is very common. I don't know how often I had this. And so be careful when you see that. Even if it's serious, be careful. It could change in a second. When you hit the guy, most of the times it would be the man you go for, you have the woman on top. So be careful, and again, let's say, step back a little bit if it's not a point where you have to do something, of course. But if they are shouting at each other, if they're pushing each other, just step back and listen and look. That's a good idea. And call the cops. But be careful. This is and especially there are cultural differences between European and other parts of the world, and they treat people differently. And it sounds silly, but it's normal for them. Even the woman will be astonished when you intervene, sometimes. So be careful, that's just what I'm saying. Okay, many participants, we had that. Don't intervene in a football hooligan fight. Makes no sense. I already said that. It does not mean when you don't intervene physically or that you don't do anything. That's wrong. You can do a lot. And that's what we're looking at now. Of course, you can inform the police at once. Or you can arrange this. If you don't have a mobile phone, you just ask someone else to call the cops. First thing you should do. Second thing is, if it's a public place, just address the public. Talk to other people, tell them, here's something going on, look, and you should make a public view of this event. The more people are coming together and looking at this point, the better it is usually, even if they don't do anything, but they look, and you have witnesses for the whole thing. So grab other people and say, here, look. You can target perpetrators if you see someone who's like the guy in this picture. Hey, this guy in the blue jeans, I see you hitting the guy. You can tell that loud. So that he knows, okay, I have a witness seeing my action. But you should be careful, because he might not be very happy with this. And you are the second target. It always depends on the situation, what you do, as you can see, but this is one thing you could do. You can stand out people publicly and say, you with the red, I've seen what you've done. Of course, and this is done a lot, you can make a mobile phone video of the whole thing, and you make it available for the cops afterwards. This is quite helpful, of course, but it won't help in the situation at that moment, because it will help with the punishment afterwards, but not at the moment. If you have the resources, you can do that. But on the other hand, it can also be the same like with the perpetrator. You stick out. If someone sees that you're filming him, you could be the next victim. So it's always your choice what you do and what you think. So if you can't make a video or it's not appropriate, memorize people who are sticking out. And especially pay attention to special features. So 180, blue jeans, black hair is not enough, because 90% of people are like this. So you need to look for special details, like shoes or special kind of clothes or shoes that are different from the mess. And of course, what he has done in the situation. If he's kicking people on the head, against the head when they are lying on the ground, this is one special thing which you should memorize. For the cops who are arriving, it's quite important to memorize the direction of escape, where they run away, and perhaps you have a plate number of a car going off. All helpful, not in the moment, but for the aftermath, for things going later on. So it's a lot you can do. If you don't jump like Batman into the situation, there's a lot you can do. If you have to intervene on behalf of a third person, then you should do it in a way like this. We already spoke about some things, but first thing is you never blindly go into a situation. Never. So if you see something, make sure you see the whole picture. And if you don't see the whole picture, perhaps it's not a good idea to intervene. If you doubt that this is the whole picture. Very important. And this is also the case when the situation seems to be very alarming. So someone is sitting on another person and stabbing him. Usually you would say, I have to jump into it just now. Be careful. Just even for a second or two, step back, look around, and try to get the whole picture. You won't help this guy on the ground when you are lying next to him. Overall situation. In a public situation, there are always people who are somehow connected to the people fighting. And you don't see them directly when you start. On this picture, the three people in the background, you never know whether they are somehow connected to the people fighting. And that's the big problem. It's not a fight one-on-one. That's why martial arts and what we are talking about is totally different. You never know. That seems to be a little bit strange, that if you decide to intervene and go for it, you don't warn anyone. You don't say stop it, because this is senseless, useless. You go and do it. And you pick on one and you stop the scene as soon as possible, without warning, without anything. You have taken the choice to do it, you do it. You don't warn anyone when you go for him. And what you never do is go in between. This is the surest way to go down to the ground and be the first victim or the second. Never. We don't do that. That's what I meant. If you intervene, you must take into account that you hit someone really badly, that you hurt someone, that you injure someone, or that he might get killed through your action. You have to answer for yourself, is it worth? Sometimes it's easy because if you have this stabbing action, okay. But usually it's not. The situation is not that clear. But you have to answer this question. Am I able to do this in this situation? Am I able to hurt this guy really bad when I go into it? or not. That's what I already said. No appeasement. It's always bad. We know that from history. It's simple. When I go physical, I don't tell anybody and I don't say anything. I just hit him. That's as simple as it is. If I take the decision to do something, I go and do it. But I'm not talking. Time to talk is over. If you talk to him before he knows there's something coming. I'm not doing that. You shouldn't let the other person out of control or out of sight, which is not easy to do. We will do that physically. And you will see how hard it is sometimes to control the rest with your eyes or whatever. So it's very, very hard to do that physically. Perhaps now it makes more sense that I'm saying there are only two options when I have to do that. In a situation like this, it will be very common that there will be the police appearing on the scene earlier or later. If you are not in the situation where you have to intervene directly and you make a report to the police, we go through it a little bit in detail just to let you know this is what I'm looking for as a policeman. You wouldn't believe what you get on the phone sometimes. You wouldn't believe it. So there's no information at all and that's it. And you don't know nothing. We start with our name, which is helpful, and the place where you are. And then you start with who is working or who is the problem. Where? On the street, in front of the restaurant where I am, with fists or with knives or whatever. That's your opinion of how it is working. Very brutal, whatever you want to add. On the fourth, male person. And then if you have a suspicion. So we have one more decisive question, and this is this one. In this case, maybe. But if you do it without hesitation and consistently, as we talked about. You go in there and you do it. It's totally different on court. But if you go into it, you put yourself on the line. And I'll do it to my conditions and not to anyone else. You are still standing in the court and can listen to it and not going into it with a wheelchair because you warned the guy. Let's talk a little bit about what happens when the police arrives, because this is important and this will happen in a situation like this. You should always keep in mind when the police arrives, they don't know what happened. They don't know your role in the whole thing. Of course, they certainly don't know that you only wanted to help. Everybody is saying that. You shouldn't be too bothered when they treat you not in the way you should be treated. That's the reason. They don't know. So it's a good idea to follow the instructions immediately and don't question them. Just do it. Of course, no resistance to police measures, even if you think, whoa, this is not right. The reason is they don't know. If you don't know and you see a scene, it's not only two people, it's usually a crowd. Shouting, gathering, you don't know. So keep that in mind when you just think about, whoa, this is not right. As soon as the opportunity arises, draw attention to the fact that you are not the one originally been involved into this situation. Usually an officer will come to you and ask you, and you can say, okay, I wasn't the one originally in this dispute, I tried to help. That's very important. Describe the whole thing very calm, if possible, and without any evaluations. You don't say, this guy was an asshole, or don't do that. Just talk about what happened, what you saw, and do it calmly. Nothing more. And usually, when you are a police officer and appear to the scene, you can see very clearly who is involved into the whole thing and who is not. If you have someone who is talking very calmly and very laid back about the whole thing, this is always a sign, okay, he's not really emotionally involved. And of course, you can say there are differences, yes, but not very often. So you judge about, when you appear, you judge about this, like, okay, this guy is totally out of his head, this guy is totally calm, and you try to make your picture about this from this feelings. So if there is a situation where, look at this picture, that are not many people. So if you have 20, 30, 40 people in a situation like this with 3, 4, 5 victims, it's very often the police has not the complete picture at that point. So the report which is written could be not complete. But this is not their duty to do that. They write down what they got, and afterwards this gets investigated. Don't worry when this report seems to be not correct. It's not the final solution, it's just the start. And afterwards, this whole thing will be investigated. And if there are serious injuries, of course, very seriously investigated. So keep that in mind. It's what's starting here is not complete usually. That's very important. If you have neutral witnesses, which the officers haven't seen so far, just point at them and tell them, okay, this lady has seen everything. Something like that, which is helpful. And you should assume that you will be named in the police report as participant of the dispute, even if you were only helping. As I said, the whole thing will be investigated afterwards, and maybe this changes then. But you should not be surprised, as I said. If you run away, usually, and it's serious, then they get you anyway, and it's not a good idea to run away. If you haven't done anything, of course you can have trouble, but it's not the trouble you have when you create the wrong picture. If you're running away, usually everybody thinks this guy has something to do with it. No, it's not a question about legally or not, it's just a question about have you done the right decision. If they're running away, it's okay. If you're lying on the ground, it was wrong. It's that simple. And sometimes it's like that. They don't run away. You have to decide what you do. And usually if the whole thing is unclear, it's not a good idea to do that, even with a weapon. And the hero in you, this is very remarkable, but the heroes are all on the graveyard, usually. So keep that in mind. It's not, I can't say you can't do this, but you can't say this is always the case when I'm hitting one or the others run away. It's not always. Of course you can use a weapon in a case like this. You can use a weapon, of course. But especially when you are outnumbered, you can use anything at hand. It's a question whether this is tactically a good idea. That's the main thing, even if you have a weapon. If you have a choice of available things which end the conflict at once, as we heard, then you have to choose the most or the less lethal thing. But usually you don't have that. Usually don't have. What's not a good idea is when you have the situation under control and afterwards you try to tell the guy this was not nice and kick him once again. Yeah, as long as you don't have the plan to intervene physically, you can do whatever you like. But if you go physical, you should not talk.